Okay, so let's keep going. Bottom of 19. Guys, please remember, we're about to turn onto page 20. Um, I think it is worth reminding you all that this thing only has 24 pages in it. So we're about to get to page 20 out of 24. We're so close to finishing this entire goddamn book of philosophy, which is amazing. In comments to this, I would love to hear your thoughts. Socrates says that being someone who works with words is the same thing as a doctor. I would be interested in your thoughts about test taking, about fake knowledge, people who think they know things when they don't, and how do we get to kind of real knowledge? It's crazy because the way we teach things in school is often like, here's how to manipulate words, but what's the truth? Here's how to cook, but how does cooking actually work? Um, here's what drugs to take, but how do the drugs actually work on your body? It's like, do people really know what they're doing, or are they just kind of following orders, or are they just kind of dealing in tricks and things they don't quite understand? So Socrates, the bottom of 19. Um, Socrates says, and do you think you can know the nature of the soul intelligently without knowing the nature of the whole? Right? You got to know the whole person, not just part of them. Phaedrus says Hippocrates, the Alcibiad, says that nature that the nature even of the body can only be understood as a whole, right? You got to understand the whole. This is the crazy thing about Socrates is you think, well, I'm going to take a speech writing class. I'm going to take BMCC makes take a speech class, and you figure, okay, this is a speech class to learn how to make speeches. But Socrates thinks you can't make speeches until you know the soul, but you can't even really know the soul until you know about everything. That's why he wants everybody to be a philosopher first and foremost, because until you have all that big knowledge, you're not really qualified. Um, and he says, yes, friend, and he was right. Still, we ought not to be content with the name of Hippocrates, but to examine and see whether his argument agrees with his conception of nature. So he says, listen, yes, this famous guy did say this, but let's see if it's true on our own. I don't want to just do it because this guy said to do it. I want to know. Socrates always wants to know for himself how something works. Um, he wants to know for himself. This is why, by the way, I've given you Plato. The reason I gave you Plato in this is a class. I could teach this class like Lysias. I could be Lysias, and I could say, guys, welcome to speech writing. Welcome to how to write an academic essay, English 101. Yes, I'm going to give you the tricks you need to know to do well in all your exams from here forward. And that way you'd be able to write and teach you all the tricks you need to know. And I do that, by the way. I mean, I teach you double space your papers and put a heading on top and put staple it in the upper left-hand corner and put page numbers at the bottom and do MLA citation. These are the things you need to know to make the paper look good. But I give you Plato because I don't just want to make your papers look good. I want you to think about the quest for truth and really learn some things. The quest for these kinds of bigger philosophical ideas. So with that in mind, Socrates says, well, let's go examine to see whether this is correct. I'm extremely excited to turn this thing to page 20 because we are so close to the end. This whole thing is over on page 24. It's not even all of 24, by the way. So literally, the only thing we have left to do in this class is go through page 20, page 21, page 22, page 23, and just a little bit on 24. We have 4.5 pages left of this. 20, 21, 22, 23, and just a little bit of 24. We are going to wrap this up. And by the way, it ends with it's very exciting at the end, so this is good. Not exciting, it's intellectually exciting. Nothing happens. Phaedrus and Socrates walk around and then they go home. All right, let's take a look at this thing. So Socrates, I'm at the top of page 20. Socrates says, well, then consider what truth as well as Hippocrates says about this or about any nature. I don't care. This guy says something fine, but I want to find out what's true. He says, ought we not to consider first whether that which we wish to learn and to teach is simple or multiform? Right. The first thing you got to know is it simple or complicated? If it's simple, then to inquire what power it has of acting or being acted upon in relation to other things, and if multiform, then to number the forms. And this is we're back to Socrates, who loves to organize things. And to see in the first case of one of them, and then in the case of all of them, what is the power of acting or being acted upon, which makes each and all of them to be what they are. Simple, by the way, he says simple and multiform. You guys know what simple means. I don't need to define that word for you. In multiform, you hear the word multi, it means lots of parts. But one of the definitions of the word simple that's slightly different from the one that you know is simple means it's only made of one thing, and multiform means it's made of lots of things. We use simple to mean easy, and that's correct. But simple fundamentally means like one. So like if an ingredient is simple, it's going to be like water or or tomato or oregano are simple. A complicated ingredient would be something like if you get like pasta sauce in the store, it's already got a bunch of. If you look at the ingredient you're adding, like ketchup. Ketchup is not a simple ingredient. Go look at what's in ketchup. It's not just tomatoes. There's more than tomatoes in there. So if it's got more than one ingredient, so Socrates says if it's simple, if it only has one thing to it, we need to understand that one thing. And if it's complicated, like if the ingredient has a lot of different things in it, then we have to break down into its little pieces. You got to look at the ingredients list and understand each piece separately, which is a pretty, Socrates loves to divide and subdivide because he wants to understand the whole thing. And the only way to understand the whole thing is divide it into little smaller bits. Okay, I'm using a lot of food metaphors today. I must be hungry. I'm also talking really fast because it's like chilly out here. Even though it's pretty nice, I like being outside, but like it's a little cold. I don't know where my cat friend went, the little guy. I don't know, there was a cat out here before. All right, so let's take a look at page 20. All right, so Phaedrus says, you may very likely be right, Socrates. And Socrates says, the method which proceeds without analysis is like the groping of a blind man, right? I mean, if you don't break it into little parts, you might as well be blind. He says, yet surely he who is an artist, ought not to admit of a comparison with the blind or deaf, right? So remember, art means skill. So artist here is the skillful person. So right, if you do it the right way, you got to break it down into parts. The rhetorician, the speechmaker, who teaches his pupils to speak scientifically, will particularly set forth the nature of that being to which he addresses his speeches. And this, I conceive, to be the soul, right? We have to, this is, in order to think about how to use words, you got to think about the soul, certainly. And again, soul, mind, psyche. His whole effort is directed to the soul, for in that he seeks to produce conviction or belief. It says, really, if you think about it, anybody who works with words is directing those words towards souls, soul, mind, psyche. Which means that anybody who works with words needs to be knowledgeable about souls, about what's going on inside of people. Otherwise, they're going to be lost. Because if you don't understand people's minds, if you don't understand their souls, if you don't understand psyche, then how are you going to convince people to listen to you if you have things to say? And this is the crazy thing, is that working with words means knowledge of the soul becomes necessary for everybody who works with words. Because words are communication. Communication with what? With other people's souls, mind, psyche. But it's just a crazy thing to say, to think that, because who works with words? Everybody. And if everybody works with words, if everybody uses words, because language is one of those things that defines the human creature. It's one of the things we do really well, particularly written language. And so in order to care, if you're a human being, you need to know about souls. So you see how this is starting to sound like church, except you got to keep remembering that soul in Greek is psyche, which is where we get mind from. And Socrates says you really got to understand souls if you're going to understand. Another way to put this, actually, is Socrates says, another way to put it is that if you're going to work with words of any kind, you need to understand the audience, right? Because the whole thing about words is you're communicating with somebody other than you. That's your audience. So if you're going to be a comedian, if you're going to make movies for a living, if you're going to be an actor on the stage, if you're going to be a director of Hollywood movies, if you're going to be a stand-up comedian, if you're going to give speeches, if you're going to be a lawyer speaking to a jury, you gotta understand the audience. You gotta understand who you're talking to, and you gotta pick out how to talk to them, because some audiences will respond differently to other things. So I speak very differently at home than I do in school, than I do with my family, because you have to tailor your arguments to fit the discussion. Cool, I think it's looking pretty good. Let's go on to the next thing.